Doug, you're just on mute.
Okay.
Great stuff. Thanks, Doug.
Right. Okay, then. Well, thank you very much, everyone. As Maya said, these are very much what I've received in terms of reports to me so far. I hope there'll be a few more to bulk it out and fill in some of the gaps. Well, we're starting with a post-larval blenny from Jersey. Lovely little thing. Often used to get reports coming in of baby flying fish being found in rock pools. And these were either post-larval blennies, which particularly the common blenny, shanny, has very large pectoral fins, but possibly also gurnards. Really, if you see the profile, you can see it's either convex head in a blenny or concave forehead for a gurnard. Okay. Well, going from smallest, almost, to largest fish in our seas, the basking shark, second biggest fish in the world. And when I started looking at these 25 years ago, there was a very clear pattern. They'd turn up from May, maybe end of April, through to about June, and then disappear from southwest waters, turning up in the northwest of Scotland, Northern Isles, from June onwards. However, that pattern has completely broken down now. They can turn up around this area anytime. In last year, the first report was March in St Ives, subsequently followed by one in Scilly, one off Lundy, and the last one of the year was November off Berry Head in Devon. There was also one stranded in Cornwall, but I haven't yet been able to find out exactly where or when that was. Fortunately, since the 90s, 80s and 90s, there has been a comeback in the blue sharks, and there's now quite a big commercial, well, not big angling, recreational angling industry based on those around here, of which Simon Thomas is very much on top of and knows all about. So I will, in fact, read his notes on that. So, but the outstanding things were that there was one very large one, and also Joe Pender in the Scillies has started fitting them with satellite tags. So, so this is from Simon. There were 2,033 blue sharks caught by, this is, I say, from the angling charter boats in the Western Channel last year. The catch per unit effort increased from 1.81 fish per trip in 2022 to 4.55 fish per trip in 2023. So quite a very significant increase there. And generally, there were fewer large fish recorded last year and only 6 males. Traditionally, we've only have females in the blue sharks off here, but increasingly lately there have been males turning up and some neonates. So 6 males were recorded out of 1,043 fish captured from Looe. The exception was a 3.1 metre male fish captured on Dave Uren's boat Mirage on 29th of August 2023, which weighed, according to length weight conversions, around 150 kilos. I've been conservative and called it 135. Unusually cold water conditions and patchy algal blooms reduced catches over 50% of the areas west of the lizard. And as you can see from this, this is Simon's catch per unit effort. In other words, number of sharks per trip caught from 1953 through to 2023. So the last 70 years, showing that massive, the large catches back in the 50s and 60s, when it was a major thing, the massive declines to the 80s. And of course, during the 90s, the fishery changed from being catch and bring ashore for weighing into catch, measure at sea and release alive, and use the length and, if possible, girth measurements to estimate the weight. So it's all been catch since 99. It's all been catch and release. And as a result, our catch figures have gone greatly up and down a bit, but last year was fairly good at 4.55 fish per trip. Back in 2012, oh, sorry, no, I won't move. I'll go back to the other first, sorry. Apologies. Moving from blue sharks to the other ones commonly encountered by the angling boats. Last year, there were 97 poor beagles reported, the most of them being year 0 and year 1 fish, so pretty small ones. Curiously, these fish were mainly found in an area from south of Looe to the lizard. The species was largely absent from areas of Plymouth and Penzance, although 2 25-kilo fish, youngsters again, were reported from south of Start Point in early November. Thresher sharks. Now, thresher sharks appear to breed around the Isle of Wight area and over to the Channel Islands and turn up in this area a bit later in the season, but the only 2 were reported as caught by, by fishing boats, though many more were sighted by the skippers, particularly those taking part in the Chart bluefin tuna program, which I'll come back to later. 1 thresher was captured by Paul Woodman's boat, Be Cool, on the 5th of July, and another reported by Jerry Rogers on the Dreamcatcher in November. So that second half of the year is when the threshers tend to be in our local waters. The species it's a regular visitor to the Western Channel, especially in the autumn months when the pilchard shoals arrive. Now, they're the ones we're used to seeing. But back in 2012, in Normandy, a large shark was washed up on the beach. Unfortunately, I don't think it was ever actually recovered to get a 100% identification, but was provisionally identified as a small-toothed sand tiger. Last year, 17th of March, at the Leppey Country Park in Hampshire, on the Solent, a large shark was found dead on the beach and provisionally identified as a small-toothed sand tiger. So from all the images, provisionally identified as that, and making it the first ever recorded in British or Irish waters. It had been hoped to recover it for the cetacean stranding program necropsy, but before it could be done, the head and fins had been removed and the body eviscerated. Fortunately, Dan Snow, the historian and television presenter, did get some photos and details before that happened. But when he went down to get the corpse, it was damaged. Though that what was recovered was taken off for necropsy. Over the next few weeks, first an adult female was found on the 31st of March, stranded on the shore of Wexford in Southwest Ireland. And then on the 1st of May, an adult male was found floating in Lyme Bay by a boat out, I think it's out of Exmouth or somewhere in that area. One of the Lyme Bay fishing boats found this large male, which was taken up to the Zoological Society of London to be necropsy. I'm afraid I haven't got any results from that yet. Maybe I have to include that in the printed report. Why? Well, we don't know. Why these ones, which are pretty well global in warmer waters, but why have they suddenly, some numbers, turned up in British and Irish waters? Over in the Channel Islands, in April, there was a marbled stingray stranded on Jersey. Excuse me. We generally think of stingrays as being what used to be called Torpedo nobiliana, and I think it's now Tetrarchy nobiliana, which can grow enormous. But the marbled electric ray, which never grows to an equivalent size, is the commoner of the two species generally in the south and southwest. And this one was photographed in shallow waters off Etchehous, 6 miles northeast of Jersey, by Nicholas Hjort. Interesting to note, 3 leeches, 1 there and 2 up by the eyes. Interesting, the position of the leeches. The electric rays, in the electric rays, this area of the musculature of the wings has been evolved to be an electrical organ. So the swollen areas of the wings are where the electricity is produced from, and the leeches are all around the borders of those areas. Normally, when our muscles move, they produce muscular movement and a tiny bit of electricity. In the electric rays, this has been reversed, and in certain muscular area patches, they produce electricity and a tiny bit of movement. This tends to work a bit like a capacitor, where it will accumulate charge and then discharge all in one go. So if one has been bouncing around in a trawl net, it is usually safe to pick it up because it will have discharged. I know from personal experience in other parts of the world, that is not always the case. The blue skate, back about 15 years ago, Sam Iglesias and other workers in France separated what we were then calling the common skate, Diptera spatis, back into 2 separate species. Prior to about 1926, there had been several species of skate, but these were all synonymized around about 1926. But a few years back, working mainly in France, separated them back to 2 species, the larger Dipterus intermedia or flapper skate, which tends to be more common around northern areas, but can be found down as far as France, and Dipterus batis, which is the blue skate, which is the commoner, though still rare, of the two in the south. There was an adult, well, a young adult, small adult, only just over a metre long, blue skate, caught off Weymouth in April last year. And then Tracy Williams, who's a fantastic beachcomber, finds lots of specimens on the beaches, particularly around Newquay, found this egg in July, and it's now been identified by the Shark Trust as being blue skate Dipterus batis, proving that they are around here. Back about 2000, a fishing boat took a larger egg case into Newlyn, and it was brought up to the National Marine Aquarium where I was at the time, and we actually found on opening it that the young was still alive in it. We managed to keep it alive for about 6 weeks in artificial conditions, but weren't able to bring it through to birth size, unfortunately. But that was the larger flapper skate. So both do occur around the southwest, but the blue skate is the dominant one, and one that is sometimes caught by anglers around the southwest. There's quite a commercial angling setup in the Northern Isles going for the flapper skate. Well, moving on from the elasmobranchs, sturgeon, generally thought of as a rare fish. This one is only about half grown and was caught off Exmouth. Better view of it. Work done by Steve Kolkler and his people working with him, his colleagues, and also fantastically hard work put in by Beshley Paul in Brixham, produced a great number of records of sturgeon, generally smaller ones like this, off the South Devon coast. And Steve, they only breed, the only place in the world they breed is the Gironde estuary in France. They've become extinct in all their other breeding areas. So we have the one population. I think it's largely maintained by captive breeding these days. And from that one population, all the ones of Accipensis sturio, the European sturgeon, have come. And it looks as if there may be a feeding area of these, well, juvenile or developing sturgeon off the south coast of Devon and maybe Dorset. So it's getting to the stage that most years we hear of one, and in fact in 2022 it was 3 or 4 of these size sturgeon being caught off our coast. Nice that something is increasing, even if it's due to artificial means. However, shocking news on the salmon in the southwest. Environment Agency said that there's been a catastrophic decline in the number of salmon entering the River Exe and going on to breed up on Exmoor. The Environment Agency say that in recent years they've stocked at their lowest levels ever recorded for the salmon. So that's a species very much in problems in this area. Species that seems to be holding its own, the John Dory. Back in August, Simon Thomas, who works on the pollock and also elasmobranchs, caught 2 large female dories. There are others around off to the southwest of Plymouth, and the largest of these, about 2.8 kilos. They were both absolutely full of ripe roe. So it looks as if that's an indication of the breeding season, late summer, early autumn, and that the waters off Plymouth are one of their breeding areas. From large to small, Hippocampus hippocampus, the short-snouted seahorse, both this and the long-snouted or spiny or maned seahorse Hippocampus gutulatus, partly, I think, due to increased diver awareness and diver recording, but now we're getting records all the way around. This year, I've received records from Brighton in the east down to Falmouth in the west, round in quite large number, well, fair numbers, 7 seen in a day. Yeah. 4 off Swanage, another area 7 of the two species. So this is Hippocampus hippocampus here, sheltering inside a queenie shell in Weymouth. A lot of the observers seem to be working in the Dorset area, hence a lot of the records come from there, though they are also known from Babbacombe and, I say, various parts along the Cornish coast and particularly in the Foul Helford area. One very small one here from June in Poole Bay, and here also from Poole Harbour, the spiny Hippocampus gutulatus, and this being a male, as males at this time of year would be, is pregnant. The pouch would here being full of developing young. It used to be thought of that these species were only coming into our coastal waters during the summer months. That has now been shown to be false. They are present from at least from February to November, if not throughout the whole year. It might be the divers that are lacking in the water in the other months. Not only that, but the numbers in Poole Harbour have increased, and they're regularly found even in trawl samples. So regular and increasing in Poole Harbour throughout the year. It's thought they're possibly feeding on what is now an abundant species there, the non-native Caprella mutica, the skeleton, the non-native skeleton shrimp. We do get British ones, but the non-native one is extremely abundant in the area. I would have personally thought it was a bit large for a seahorse to take in, but there has been an increase in the Caprella and an increase in the seahorses. Round in Studland Bay, Chris Brown and Chloe Brown, his daughter, have been studying in depth the spiny seahorses, Hippocampus gutulatus, and they've now found they can actually, by looking at the arrangement of spots on the side of the head, identify individuals. In the same way as it's been going on for years with the dorsal fins of bottlenose dolphins, more recently with the markings on whale sharks, and in the last few years, Paul Naylor has been studying the Tompot blennies around the southwest, and he can now recognise, I think it's something like 80 individuals by their markings. Now, Chloe and Chris have shown that this can also be done by looking at these markings on the head region of Hippocampus gutulatus. And I think they've identified, I know they've got about 3 to 5 regulars they see regularly and say, oh, that's so-and-so again, that's Dot or that's so-and-so. But by doing that, they've been able to use the Lincoln Index to make an estimation of the population of Hippocampus gutulatus in the seagrass beds of Sutherland Bay, and have come up with an estimated population of 57 Hippocampus gutulatus in that area. In the course of doing this, they've observed and filmed a lot of behavior and general carrying on of the seahorses. Chris was telling me on Sunday they actually saw one female take in a mysid that was far too large for it, and after trying to spit it out and rub it out of its mouth for ages, actually used its tail to pull the overlarge one out of its spout, out of its mouth. They've also filmed courting males, a male courting a female, when another male came in, and there was aggression between the two. They were hitting heads and pecking at one another, aggression between the two males, apparently for the attentions of the female. That's marvelous observational work that Chris and Chloe have been doing there. One very helpful fisherman, Andy Giles. Oh, sorry, I haven't credited this photo to him. This is one of his photos. Andy Giles out of Loo. Very helpful. Sends me lots of material, including that sturgeon earlier. This is a bluemouth. This is supposedly a deep water species. First ones I came across were ones that have been caught beyond the drop-offs in the Bay of Biscay in 400 meters or so. But some have turned up around Britain. There was a time when quite a few were turning up in the North Sea. I've even had one from the mudflats at Burnham-on-Sea in the Bristol Channel. But uncommon still and worth recording. So the bluemouth, open the mouth and it's bright blue inside, but even so, you don't need to open. Just looking through the opercular plate here, you can see the dark blue behind. So it's one of the scorpionfish group, but non-venomous, and one that is probably one of the commoner of the group in our waters, but still not very common. Another species that's becoming commoner, a member of the grouper family, the Serranids, and probably one of the smallest groupers in the world, growing up to probably 12 centimeters in British waters, may go up to 20 total, but increasing numbers. Used to be around, get one every 3 or 4 years. Last year, there was something like 6. This is the only one I'm aware, sorry, 2022, about 6. This is the only one I'm aware of at the moment. Please tell me more from last year. But certainly an increasing and probably establishing species in this area. Another species that has come in is the boog. It is a semi-pelagic sea bream, and quite a few of these around Cornwall now. These two were caught off Plymouth back in last June, including the were caught off there. However, anglers are also catching this species. Obviously, this isn't locally. This is a catch landed in Asturias, in northern Spain. But this, the axillary or Spanish bream, rather similar shape to the boog, but a longer, more pointed snout, dark spot at the base of the pectoral fin, largish eye. And these are now being caught by anglers off our coast. Prior, about 3 years ago, I think I had 5 records ever of them in Britain. Now they're being caught quite regularly by anglers, sea anglers. A species that was only 12 records up until 1997, now obviously breeding in our waters. I first came across juveniles of these back about 1999 from Whitsand Bay in southeast Cornwall, these from St Austell Bay. But these are young gilthead bream, young Couch's bream, very similar in general appearance to the gilthead bream, also having that little gilthead stripe between the nostrils, but then pinker in coloration, same fairly steep forehead, but generally pinker in color. And you can just about see here the European race of this species has tiny white tips to the tail. Surprisingly, the American race, which they call a red porgy, otherwise identical, does not have those white tips to the tail. As I mentioned earlier, getting quite good numbers of blue shark now coming into our waters, and sometimes with them getting the carangid, the jack, the pilot fish, Norcrates ducta, coming in with the blue sharks. 2 separate cases, both from the Celtic deeps last October. So look out for pilot fish in amongst the blue sharks that come up to our coast. The blue sharks start turning up from June onwards and go through to about October, November. And that's when to look for these with them. All right, we have a problem here. Sorry, I've obviously hit something I shouldn't have.
We can still see the screen, okay, Doug? If that's
Yes, I've got this bit toolbar upgrade taking place. Hope it's not going to stop me.
Hopefully you can just move the slides on that still, or
Yeah. I'll try going back. Ah. No.
perhaps just try your arrows on the keyboard, Doug.
Okay,
Might
yes.
allow you to move the slides.
No.
Mm.
I'm wondering if it might be worth going out of screen sharing and coming back in again.
Sure, yeah, please do.
I'll try that.
Thanks, Doug.
Yes.
There we go.
Appears to be working again.
Brilliant, thank you.
The old computer trick. Variable blennies, first found in British waters just off Plymouth in 2007, when I misidentified them as striped blennies. But fortunately, Paul Naylor corrected me a couple of years later when he got some in Plymouth Sound. But they were initially known just from the Plymouth area. Now they have extended well down into Cornwall, I think off the Bizzies and around there. And this is the most easterly yet recorded in Poole Bay. In Plymouth Sound, they are regularly breeding, something like 5 pairs or more breeding in known areas of Plymouth Sound. So it's now well established in areas along the south coast of Dorset and Devon and into Cornwall. Stevens goby has been known for years, but as a deeper water species. Excuse me. However, in the last few years, it's been turning up in shallower waters, and there was one caught off the caught in Plymouth Sound, no, sorry, just south of Plymouth, just south of the breakwater. But on the 5th of September, one caught from the shore in Stonehouse in Plymouth Sound set the British rod caught record. This species is now can now claim to be a record, providing it's over the record weight of 9 grams. That is the British rod caught record for a Stevens goby. But it does show that they are increasing in coastal waters. Here, down in Falmouth, near the Bizzies. We don't know much about this species. It's probably the smallest marine fish in Western Europe, Gwillet's goby, but it's so small and so cryptically coloured that it's only rarely actually spotted and photographed. I've heard several divers say to me, it's only when I looked at my photos afterwards that I saw it was there. Here, Lynn actually found one, Lynn Bordock, who produced many of the photos I'm using today, found one and photographed this one in Weymouth Bay. So that is the smallest marine fish that we're aware of in Britain. Flying fish. Over the last few years, there have been flying fish reported for years in the channel. And in fact, there's even one record of Chilopogon pininati barbatus, which Wyn Wheeler found, I think it was back in the 60s, in a basket of herring on the market in Hull, or might have been Grimsby, but one of the East Coast fishing ports, one was found in a basket of herring. However, lots were reported at one time as Exocetus volitans, but that is a tropical species, and none have ever been proven to be in Northern European waters. So most of the ones that have been identified have turned out to be Chilopogon heterourus, the Atlantic flying fish, and we do need to get hold of some more of these to check them out. Joan Edwards, who many of you may know, actually saw 2 flying in Corsan Bay, just outside Plymouth, but obviously they were just seen flying, weren't able to identify them. However, just a bit, they were extremely common last year off the Atlantic coast of France, and Sam Iglesias said they were all Chilopogon heterourus, except one, which was Furcatus. You see their pectoral fin, the flying fin, on the left here, so clearly distinguished, and that was the first ever for France. In November, this one was found on the beach at Newquay up in Wales. And from this photo, I essentially identified it as the black-winged flying fish, Hirundicthes rondeleti. And I sent these photos, a group of photos, to several collaborators in Spain and France. And Sam Iglesias came back to me and said, as far as I can see, it can only be that species. which has not been recorded on the Atlantic coast of France or Ireland. So this is a new species for Atlantic coast of France, Ireland, and Britain. A species that's been around for a while and here in good numbers now. The Atlantic bluefin tuna and CFAS have got this tagging program going on. And last year, they tagged almost 1,400. They measured 1,436, but due to one thing and another, they can't manage to tag all of them. They tagged 1,383. 24 angling charter boats took part in the operation. 3,690 hours at sea, and 19 trips had scientific observers, and other species observed during the work were common bottlenose rissos and white-sided dolphins, harbour porpoise, fin, minke, and pilot whale, blue shark, thresher shark, basking shark, and sunfish and seals. So I think there were more basking sharks recorded in that survey. I'll have to try and get hold of the figures. However, interestingly, if we compare the chart figures for 2023 and 2022, the number of anglers was down by 90. The number of hours at sea was down for 300. But the numbers of bluefin tuna measured and tagged was up by 300. So it looks, could be just that their techniques are improving, or else the population is at least maintaining itself, if not increasing. These are the 2022 figures. As I say, good, but not as good as the subsequent 2023. And as a consequence, the government has now set a quota. Previously, we didn't have Britain had no quota from the Atlantic Tuna Commission because it hadn't asked for one. We don't get tuna in our water, so we don't need a quota. Now we have got a quota, and that is 40 tons, which means about 400 fish can be caught between July and December in British waters. I have unfortunately heard rumours that when they leave British waters in the end of the year, in the international waters off our coast, there can be other longliners waiting to catch them out there. But have to see. Flatfish, megrim. Quite a lot of these get caught off the southwest, but all in deep water. Young Jackie Costello here caught this one of about 500 grams, fishing from the breakwater, the Mountbatten breakwater in Plymouth Sound. She took her club record and the Southwest Junior record with this, and there's been very few reports of these being inshore. I did actually. It's generally thought of as a deeper water fish. The shore record is 2 pounds 6 ounces, but that has lasted since 1987. Jackie's fish was 1 pound 1 ounce or 500 grams. But she was delighted with that and very pleased to add to our knowledge of these fish. The oceanic pufferfish, this one, one of these, not this one, was found at Pra Sounds. They are a regular occurrence off our coast. Sometimes it's just one every 2-3 years, and then you get up to 10 in a single year. So we have 2 species of pufferfish turning up in Britain. This is the commoner one. The other one, there's only been about 6 occurrences. The other is the smooth or blunt-headed. I've forgotten the name. Spiroides pachygaster. Oh, sorry. Back a moment. While on flatfish, quite an unusual sighting, partly because they're so cryptic, I think, was a Thor's schooledfish, which was photographed by a diver in the Eastern Narrows off Falmouth. So this is one of the very few diver photographs of Thor's schooledfish having been seen in that area. So the oceanic pufferfish found by Robin Chapman. So that's another useful one to keep to the records. Then moving on to the turtles. Well, this is the one we expect to see, the leatherback, but 2023, first time in my knowledge, there were more loggerheads recorded than leatherbacks in the southwest. There was 1 Kemp's, but I haven't been able to get more details of that. 2 leatherbacks seen at sea, and 1 found dead. The turtle spur could refer to a sighting of one of the leatherbacks. Can't be certain. That's why I've put 1 or 2. So, but 1 Kemp's Ridley. The leatherbacks come into our waters every year, and they can maintain their internal body temperature. They're not homeothermic, but they can increase their body temperature and survive in our waters quite happily, feeding primarily on jellyfish. If everyone looks inside their mouths, they've got a whole comb of backward pointing spikes that helps them grab and hold jellyfish. And so they're regular. The largest turtle anywhere in the world was a leatherback washed up at Harlech about 30 years ago, and now in National Museum of Wales. Loggerheads all tend to be small, tend to be juveniles, and it looks as if these possibly get caught on the North Atlantic drift current and carried up here from breeding grounds in the Western Atlantic, in the warmer subtropical Western Atlantic and tropical, carried up here, and when they reach our shores, they're nearly all cold shocked. The majority of them will die of that, but some were found alive and taken in for treatment, and around 50% of those have managed to survive with careful care and attention in various aquariums like Blue Reef and Anglesey Sea Zoo. However, the pattern was they'd be brought in, cared for, and got up back and good and healthy, have checked over by a vet, then flown out to Canaries or the Azores or somewhere warm where they could be released back into their natural habitat. However, this year, due to difficulties on importation of livestock into the EU due to Brexit, we have 5 loggerhead turtles stuck in Britain, ready for re-release, but unable to go off to the suitable release areas, needing N+1 veterinary certificates, and they've only got N certificates at the moment. Looking at the figures for the last 6 years, 16 or 17 turtles in the southwest. That's more than in the whole of Britain last year, Britain and Ireland last year. But unfortunately, the vast majority are these cold-shocked loggerheads. Most years, 2019 here, typical, 13 leatherbacks, 1 loggerhead. But, and as you can see, overall, there's normally more leatherbacks than loggerheads. But this year, the other way around, I haven't got national figures yet to put in for comparison. Excuse me. Most of them, those cold-shocked loggerheads, came in the first half of the year. Sorry, wrong piece of paper. Well, no, the leatherbacks came in throughout the year, but loggerheads, there were 6 before April and 5 since October. So we got fairly even distribution at the beginning and end of the year of the cold-shocked loggerheads. This is one of the November ones, found at Hale in Cornwall. And at present, as far as I'm aware, in the Blue Reef Aquarium, certainly taken to Blue Reef Aquarium in Newquay for rehabilitation. One thing, much of this work of rescuing them and getting them in for rehabilitation is done by volunteers from British Divers Marine Life Rescue, and their permanent rescue officer, Dan Jarvis, has supplied me with a lot of this data. So great thanks to Dan for the work he's doing and also for the data he's passing on, which has proved so useful. Of the loggerheads, one of the ones that went into Blue Reef early in the year was found to have a Columbus crab underneath its carapace at the rear next to the tail, and 2 came with a cluster of goose barnacles at the rear of their carapace. I'm wondering, do they get the goose barnacles because they're unwell? Or do the goose barnacles, through the drag from them, the friction due to the goose barnacles, cause them not to be able to get out of the North Atlantic drift and therefore make them more likely to strand? A question for somebody to look into. But certainly, this is not, we've had previous strandings where they've had a cluster of the goose barnacles on them. I'm not certain they're the same species of goose barnacle each time, but being very interesting to find out, to actually start looking at this. I know we had one, I think it was last year, where the weight of the goose barnacles were about 1/3 of the weight of the total turtle and barnacles. Thank you very much. And that's me done.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Doug. That was really interesting. I don't think many people would believe we've got all of these sturgeon and turtles and various other things in our waters. Great to hear about it all. We've got a couple of questions here from the people, of our attendees. Got one from Bex from Cornwall Wildlife Trust that was asking whether there's a restriction or control on the type of fishing allowed for tuna.
Sorry, I'm not aware of the latest regulations on that. As far as I'm aware, all the ones that have been landed commercially so far have been done by angling.
Okay, thank
So it's
you.
mainly by rod and line today.
And perhaps if anyone's got any further answers to that question, they could put it into the Q&A. And I've got another question from Keith here. Doug, are there any records of black-faced blennies in Plymouth Sound in 2023? He's aware of one of a pair at Rennie Rocks, and the population of the Sound seems to have collapsed in the past few years from his observations.
Yeah, I have not received any records of black-faced blennies from anywhere. Be nice to hear from Lynn Baldock or Paul Naylor. I spoke to Paul Naylor at the weekend, and I think he said he had seen one earlier this year under Swanage Pier. But whether they were there last year and if there are any other areas apart from that, the black-faced blennies, when they first turned up in Britain, first found in Britain, and were thought to be a new species and described as a new species by Wim Wheeler, were found at Portland and at Plymouth. And people pointed out, both naval ports. Is there some connection here? They've now spread much more widely, obviously, down into Cornwall and around. But yeah, the black-faced blennies, Swanage seems to be one of their strongholds. But there were regularly some in Plymouth Sound, particularly, which anyone who did diving training at Bovysand probably saw them because they were regular in the holes around Fort Bovysand.
I think I may have seen them there myself, yeah. And I just wanted to ask if I could as well. So you were saying about the poor beagles and that the sightings that you've had recorded were not from Plymouth to Penzance, is that right?
Yes.
I'm just wondering if you think that's because they just haven't been passed on to you, or do you think that's a true reflection of the sort of geographical distribution of them?
This is Simon Thomas's data, and this is from commercial charter angling boats. So, but there were charter boats out from Plymouth, and there were certainly charter angling boats out from Penzance.
Okay.
So it does look like a real pattern.
Yeah, great stuff.
There was a time a few years back when there was one commercial fishing boat out of Newlyn I think he'd lost his quota for most things and went out targeting poor beagle, and he caught about 130 half-grown ones down off Penzance. But of course, what is a fish or shark's perception of the world, of the cartography, compared to ours? We think of it land terms, they think of it in water. Their perception would be in water body terms. So it could simply be the water body they're used to, where the fronts are and the rest of it moves around, and they're still where they are in their water terms, though not in our land terms.
Great. Lovely, great stuff, thank you. I don't know if there's any more questions, if anybody wants to put a last one in there. So just a reminder then, as Doug has put on his last slide here, if you've got any observations or records to send to him, that's douglas.herdson@btinternet.com, and perhaps you want to pass it around your own professional circles for the organisations you work in as well, so that Doug can have as much information as he can handle to be able to make this as up to date as possible. But thank you so much to everybody for attending, and thank you from the MBA. It's a really beautiful sunny day today. It's almost as nice as the background image. Your talk has really made me want to get in the water and go diving, Doug, and see some of these incredible species we have on our shores. So thank you, Doug, and thank you to all of our listeners for attending today.